Hello, everybody. My name is Sophie Ziegler. I am the events coordinator at Library Juice, and I'm super excited to be holding this info session. I'm just going to say a couple of things about Library Juice and the things that we're up to, and then I'm going to pass it over to the editors to talk about why we're here today. Library Juice has three main arms, the first of which is Library Juice Academy, which is professional development for librarians and archivists and all of us in the field, all information workers. You can find more about us at libraryjuiceacademy.com, where you can find all the new courses that start every single month. You can choose by certificate or other paths to move through, or you can always buy courses a la carte for anything that you decide that you needed to know but didn't learn in library school, or that you suddenly need to know because your job changed under you. We also have Library Juice Press, which puts out books and journals on critical angles of information studies, again, writ large, for all of our librarians and archivist friends. We have, in addition to a wonderful backlist of titles, we have new titles coming out all the time, and we have two amazing journals that we currently publish. One of which, of course, is the Journal of Critical Digital Librarianship, which we're hearing more about today. And then finally, our third arm is Library Juice Connections, which is what brings us all together. And this is a chance to work with authors from Library Juice Press to talk about what they're up to and what they've been thinking about. This is also a chance to work with instructors from Library Juice Academy to talk about what they're teaching and what they're thinking about, and for everybody in the field to identify the topics that we are interested in, to create spaces for us to talk about what it means to be information workers these days, and a lot of what we'll be hearing about from the Journal of Critical Digital Librarianship, these sorts of topics. We've got great things happening all the time, as well as a website with many, many, many recordings. And you can find all of those at libraryjuiceconnections.org. And that is all I wanted to say. Leah Duncan, I'm going to pitch it to you.
Thank you, Sophie. I'm Leah Duncan. I am the editor of the Journal for Critical Digital Librarianship. I'm going to just provide an overview of JCDL overall, and then I'll pass it off to Rachel and Emily to talk about our two specific special issues. I wanted to say thanks to Sophie for and Library Juice Connections for giving us the opportunity to have this info session. But to jump right into it, the Journal of Critical Digital Librarianship is an open access, open peer review journal that publishes and builds community around cultural heritage digital library work. We focus on work that integrates feminist, anti-racist, post-colonial, queer, anti-ableist, techno-critical frameworks. We're interested in critical approaches to topics like selection for digitization, metadata remediation, collections as data, teaching with digital collections, doing projects with digital collections, etc. So essentially, our scope is the intersection of critical frameworks and thinking about digital libraries. So the manuscripts should include both of those factors. Sometimes we'll get submissions that maybe is a digital humanities project that's critical, but doesn't engage significantly with digital libraries specifically. And so that's the sort of thing that might be better for a different journal. We're open to submissions from authors at any career stage, including those without institutional affiliations. We welcome contributions regarding projects, communities, technologies, regardless of their original language, size, funding. We're also open to non-conventional submission formats. So we have published articles and interviews and case studies. We've also published podcast episodes. We've published Tumblr blogs. We've published sort of visually presented, deconstructed articles. So we would be delighted to consider your research, your case studies, dialogues, reflections, accounts of failure, and in whatever format that best suits your intellectual project. a little bit about how JCDL got started, and we're still a relatively young journal. Around 2019, 2020, Sophie and I were working together at Louisiana State University. And we were administrating and developing the Louisiana Digital Library, which is a multi-institutional state library. And we had received a Mellon grant that funded several projects related to developing ethical collections as data. So we were gathering Louisiana Digital Library administrators from across the state to talk about our collection development practices and metadata guidelines. And one initiative we facilitated was a speaker series, and that speaker series hosted several scholar librarians, Dorothy Berry, Tanya Sutherland, Jacqueline Wernimont, to talk about collections as data. So this speaker series resulted in really brilliant original research that we wanted to share, and we didn't really have a great place to share, so we founded JCDL. We talked to folks at Code for Lib and in the library with the lead pipe as sort of guidance, advisors, inspiration for our own open peer review process. Code for Lib specifically says they seek to lower the barriers to professional communication, stating that the rigid structure and style enforced by traditional refereed scholarly journals is one such barrier, preventing busy library workers from contributing because of added commitment, because the added commitment this entails. And I think that's a statement and a principle that we are also guided by at JCDL. So that takes me to our current peer review process. So last year we migrated, maybe it's been 2 years. In the last 12 to 18 months, we migrated from bpress to Open Journal System, OJS, and we're now published by Litwin instead of any specific university. And we took that migration as a time to revise our peer review process by adding more defined structure and timelines. So reviewers now use a feedback form within OJS to answer high-level questions about manuscripts. And there are 2 possible rounds of peer review before authors submit for final editorial decision. So that's the process in our sort of regular issues, and that will continue to be the process with our special issues. Between rounds of proposal and review, authors and reviewers usually take the opportunity to have a Zoom meeting to discuss feedback, ask questions, sort of delineate what was really important and maybe what was just kind of a preference from a reviewer. So those conversations, I think, are what is really special about open peer review with JCDL specifically. But to go a little bit more, there are challenges to open peer review that I think are unique to this process, and we're still working through those challenges. And there are challenges that will always be inherent in an open review process like this that I think potential authors should be prepared to consider. I think the great benefit of open peer review are the strong professional connections that you have the opportunity to make with reviewers, with, in this case, a guest editor. You're really getting to know each other, getting to know each other's ideas, and creating something together with another expert in your field. And I think that's really special. The flip side of that is there is emotional risk to doing a peer review process with people face-to-face virtually whose names that you know. I think that can change the tenor of the review process. If there's a conflict, you know who you're in conflict with. With blind peer review, an author might be frustrated or confused, but you sort of sit in the dark with that frustration. With open peer review, there's the possibility to develop tense feelings, uncomfortable feelings with people whose name that you know where they work. So there's potential awkwardness there, right? I think it's worth it, but it's something to consider. Another strength is that you can really improve your work as you're working on your manuscript and reviewing it. I think there's the possibility for development more so than blind peer review, because you're able to have these dialogues and really talk through details with your reviewers, share your own ideas, share why maybe that doesn't work for you. At the same time, you're growing these connections with reviewers. That does not mean a guaranteed publication. And I think that sort of environment can feel a little cognitively dissonant sometimes. Your reviewers have invested in your work, you're really improving it, you're in this collaborative process. And then I come in and say, this is no longer in scope, or this isn't a fit. So that's still a possibility, even though you're developing these relationships that will hopefully last. And then with non-traditional formats, as editors, we have to continually think through our expectations for published work, regardless of levels of formality. So we can't rely on sort of those traditional academic signals of formality, language, vocabulary to signal contribution to the field, which is, I think that's maybe just something that editors continually have to work through. But I think it's worth clarifying that having a creative submission is a contribution in itself, I think, in sort of redefining what scholarship can be. But the content of that creative submission also has to be original, relevant, saying something about digital library work. So those are just sort of formality things to think about. This is after saying some cautionary things about open peer review to think through transparently. This is a slide, I think, from Ben Chufasa about his experience with open peer review and how positive it was, that there's mutual learning, that it enables a sense of humanity, that it's less isolating, and that we're kind of questioning profit structures in traditional academic publishing. Moving forward with JCDL, a goal for the next year or so is to apply for inclusion in the database of open access journals. At this point, we are still too young. We haven't established ourselves, but after the publication of these special issues, we'll be in a really strong place to be included in the database of open access journals. So that's really exciting and something we will pursue next year. Continuing to build community among authors and reviewers, and continuing to think about workflows for different genres and formats of submissions. So that's sort of what we're looking to for the future. Again, I'm really excited to work with you all. And at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Rachel to talk about the issue that she is the lead guest editor for.
Thanks, Leah. Before I share my slides, I'll just introduce myself a little bit. My name is Rachel Starry. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the head of digital scholarship and publishing at the University of Pittsburgh. I've been a reviewer for JCDL previously, and I'm currently on the editorial board. And yeah, I'm excited to be the lead guest editor for one of our two special issues we're here to talk about today, namely digital librarianship in an eroding democracy. So I do want to give a shout out to my fellow guest editors on this issue: Crystal Bolert, Cassandra George, Larry Eames, Catherine Michaelis, and Hillary Richardson. Yeah, so a number of journals have um, been doing special issues and just thinking about a lot of sort of interrelated issues related to the erosion of democratic procedures, sort of increasingly nationalist political agendas around the world, a lot of like precarity and crisis that in turn has absolutely affected academic institutions, libraries, and the work that we do with digital libraries. So the full CFP does go into this in greater detail. We can share the links to that if y'all haven't had a chance to read the full CFP. But sort of in framing this special issue, we are specifically inviting submissions that encourage folks to reflect on what your library work looks like, what projects we've been engaging in as a field, the issues at the intersection of digital library work and this myriad of democratic crises and library security that we're facing right now. So some of the sort of guiding questions we've been thinking about and that we are inviting submissions to engage with are, what are some of the strategies we can use to keep our work sustainable, right? How do we sustain ourselves also as library workers? Thinking about tools and process. Are we being asked to or forced to engage with certain tools like generative AI on our campuses? How do we respond when that or changes in uh, state laws or other university policies are asking us to not use certain language? Or how do we continue to center justice in our work when we're sort of being constrained in a lot of ways? Are there steps that we can take within our professional roles to advocate for our most vulnerable neighbors, the communities that we're working with? And then what work is being done to digitally highlight and archive the labor of folks who are sort of resisting ongoing violence and crises in this space. And I can't see the chat, so I'm going to move through some of these slides, and then there will be time absolutely for discussion and questions. But I'll ask one of my co-facilitators to interrupt me if there's anything in chat I need to have my attention drawn to right now. So as Leah mentioned, JCDL does publish a variety of different types of submissions, including articles, case studies, interviews, and again, those could be in multiple different formats, but also reflections and personal narratives, and creative works of various types. And again, we have in the CFP a list of suggestions for things that we're wanting to see proposals and submissions focus on. Again, thinking about the precarity in terms of funding loss, preservation efforts that represent sort of different forms of resistance, the ethics of different kinds of work, specifically, generative AI is mentioned in the CFP, impacts of politically induced stress and the chaos and violence that we're facing on library workers. How do we, again, sustain ourselves through crises, centering human care, talking about emotional labor, loss, grief, other anxieties during crisis work, talking about refusal, and advocacy strategies. So these are all sort of the kinds of submissions that we're hoping to see for this special issue in particular. Again, the different types of submissions have sort of different guidelines. There's more information on the JCDL website about these. So there's sort of a range of different types of ways you could potentially contribute to this special issue. And we're very open to the different media-rich perspectives. Again, as Leah noted, the peer review process for that is sort of like in development and ongoing and very iterative. That's just something to keep in mind if you're excited about submitting that kind of submission. There's obviously going to be, some of the sort of back and forth and discussion and negotiation about the review process with that. And then ultimately, again, we're working with OJS as a publishing system. So whatever folks do end up creating does have to still be publishable by the system. So for instance, if someone does a podcast, In the past, folks have published that on RSS feeds or places where podcasts can be found. We've also just created, the MP4, MP3, maybe if it wasn't video, episodes in the system, and then published also transcripts, things like that. Not going to look through all these dates in particular. Again, the CFP has this all listed out, but just to call your attention to sort of the broad strokes of the timing for the special issue. Our extended deadline is June 12th. We, as a special issue editorial team, will be reviewing proposals and plan to be back in touch with submitters by June 26th. The first deadline would be September for a first draft. And then, as Leah mentioned, there's this sort of ongoing multiple review stage process between October through February for revision and peer review discussion, with a goal of publishing the special issue in April of 2027, which feels like a long way away, but it will go fast. So we've got a QR code on the screen here. Again, we can pop the link in the chat as well for the submission form and the full CFP if you haven't had a chance to read that. And folks are welcome to email me if you have questions afterwards. If you're watching the recording of this info session, just a chat. Also, before you submit, if you have any questions about, formulating the abstract, that sort of thing. But yeah, with that, I will stop sharing.
Yeah, I'll take over. Talk a little bit about our second special issue. All right, so I do want to start as well by introducing myself. So I'm Emily Zinger. I'm the Southeast Asia Digital Librarian at Cornell University. I have also been a reviewer with JCDL for a while, and Rachel and I actually were co-guest editors on JCDL's first special issue, along with Leah and Sophie and some other folks. But this is our first time branching out with our own special issues. I also want to call out my fellow guest editors on this issue: Brenna Michael, Kieran Mohammadi Williams, Suda Ahmad, Aaron Paul, and Ashley Thomas. It's a great team to work with, and we're very excited to be reading all of your submissions. So this issue, the graduate issue as we're calling it, really came from the idea of fighting imposter syndrome and creating a space that explicitly was welcoming the perspectives of early career librarians. And so we are explicitly inviting current students, recent graduates, and early career librarians to reflect on this transition from the classroom to the profession and all of the different pathways that lead to and through digital librarianship. And I want to pause here for a minute and just think about how we define early career. We're trying to be as generous in that definition as makes sense. So if you have had a full career in an entirely different field but are new to librarianship, you are an early career librarian. If you graduated from a library school, and as Leah said, right, we're interested in your experiences of failure as well, and you ended up getting a job in a completely different field, but you're still putting some of the practices from librarianship into work, like, we still are interested in hearing from you and reading your submissions for this issue. And so as our occupation continues to evolve, right, from its origins in the digital turn, what are the challenges and barriers facing those who are new to the field? The digital library roles continue to be characterized by highly specialized or niche job requirements. And so it asks a lot of us as librarians have to develop divergent skills across lots of multiple disciplines. So how do we embrace this disjuncture between fields and methodologies, between everyday tasks and the big picture, between emerging technologies and centering community values to most critically engage with our work, and really thinking about the differences between the theories that were taught in library school and then what we are required to put into practice to succeed on the job. And so, right, we have those same formats that Rachel mentioned before. Some of the rest of this will be a little bit repetitive, but I'll just go through it. case studies, articles, interviews, reflections, creative works, all that are about, but not limited to, current trends in LIS curriculum related to digital librarianship, the impacts of library internships or capstone research projects or practicums, recent experiences on the digital library job market. This could be resume writing, interviews, job descriptions. And again, you don't have to have landed a library job at the end of that for us to still be interested in what you've experienced and your perspective on this topic. And lastly, intersectional theories and methods across disciplines within a single job. So digital librarianship can be very wide-reaching and all-encompassing and can touch a lot of different parts of the academy. And so we're interested in how folks in our role make that work in a single job. The submission guidelines here are the same as what Rachel covered before. And these details, I'm not going to linger here, are in the CFP. Now, our dates are a little bit different for this issue. It's a bit faster. We want to publish this issue by February 5th, so we can space out these two special issues. But the deadline is June 12th as well, with an announcement of accepted proposals on June 26th. But then we are asking for that first full draft by August 28th. Now, I'll add that when we were devising this timeline as a editorial team, we really wanted to take into consideration the schedules of students and trying to build the bulk of the work into the summer where there wouldn't be classes. Here is that CFP here is the form where you can submit your abstracts. And if you have any questions beyond what we're able to talk about today, please send me an email. I'm happy to chat with you directly, share your questions and concerns with the rest of the editorial team, and hopefully get to a place where you're ready to submit an abstract. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel and Emily. I don't see questions in the chat at the moment, but any participants, please feel free to drop them in.
I can go over some of the questions that I've received in email. So one question was, can you submit to JCDL if you are not a librarian based in the US? And the answer is yes. We would be happy to read your experiences in digital librarianship internationally. Another question that I've received is, I have a lot to say about my experience as an early career librarian, but I am not a digital librarian. That's not in my job title. Am I still welcome to submit? And our answer is yes. There are librarians who are not technically digital librarians who work with a lot of digital library resources, sharing them with students, working on metadata creation. There are all kinds of ways in which digital library resources are threaded through multiple job titles in a library. And so if you feel like you're able to say something interesting and original about that in regards to your position, please share it with us. You don't have to be project managing a repository to be welcome to submit.
I have a question for Rachel and Emily. Is there anything you feel like you learned from guest editing our previous special issue that is going to inform the way you lead guest edit these special issues?
You can go first, Rachel. I see you nodding your head. It's a little difficult to answer. Yeah. Because I think the work is so iterative. Like, absolutely, there are things that we learned. I think specifically thinking back to like the peer review process for formats, things just we try to take a very humane approach at JCDL to like the whole process, and like Leah talked about the open peer review process and like the benefits of that being less isolating. It does just take more time, and sometimes there's submissions where we kind of go through the process, and then ultimately there might be a decision at the end where we collectively decide it's still not, the right fit for the special issue, and so that's always like a possibility. So I think just trying to like be really open and signaling um, where we're all kind of providing feedback throughout the process and being open in that conversation is really helpful.
Yeah, I think the other lesson that we learned, and Rachel and I have talked about this a lot, and Leah and Sophie too, so you all know, but clear expectation setting from the beginning, especially in terms of timelines. So I think in the last special issue that we worked on, we thought that with the best intentions, that the more flexible we could be in the process, the more humane that would be for our authors. When in reality, while some people thrive under flexibility, other folks do much better with clear timelines and deadlines and expectations. And we had about an even split on our authors who said at the end, wow, it was so great that I could have all these extensions. And then half of the authors saying, I found this really disorienting. I wish I had known what the ultimate deadline would be. And so we're working to find a middle ground with that, and hopefully our clear timeline um, with these two special issues will build on that feedback and make the process easier for everyone involved.
I see a question in the Q&A from Sarah about how the journal decided on these two special issue foci. Do you want to handle that one, Leah?
Sure. How did the journal editorial team decide on these two special issues? How often are special issues published? Do you or the editorial team ever put out CFPs for potential special issue ideas? Yes. So we have a pretty large review team. I can't remember exactly how many reviewers we have on our team, kind of in our pool of reviewers, but it's between 20 and 30. So for this set of special issues, we essentially published a call for special issue topic pitches to our reviewers, knowing that the pitches that we ended up moving forward with, we were hoping the reviewer who made the pitch would serve as a guest editor, and that ended up being the case. So we accepted pitches for special issue topics from our reviewers. We met as an editorial board. So the board includes me, Rachel, Emily, and a handful of other people who have kind of worked with JCDL for several years, and chose pitches as a board. Some of the pitches were overlapping, so we kind of ended up merging them together and then inviting a couple of people who had related pitches to serve as guest editors, and everyone who received that invitation accepted. So they're staying connected to an idea they contributed to. How often are special issues published? That's kind of a developing question. So that's an open question. The special issue seems to have so far be really successful in eliciting high quality, innovative proposals just based on the feedback we've received so far. So it's possible that we will keep with a special issue model. A lot of the journals that we sort of model ourselves after are relying heavily on special issues to inspire new identity or new ideas within the scope. So I guess stay tuned for that answer, but I have a feeling that more special issues will be in the pipeline in the coming years.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for your interest in being here today also.
Yeah, it's been very gratifying to take this process just from two ideas that we had all the way to this point and theme, so much interest. So thank you.